Rockefeller Center. Now they're fighting to get in. They all laugh.
Good morning. My name is Susan Reardon. I'm a staff hearing officer, and I'm going to call the meeting of Wednesday, April 8th to order. Today we have 5 items on the agenda, but item E, which is 462 Canal Road, has been postponed to April 22nd. I'm not aware of any other changes to the agenda, are there? No? I have one announcement. 2105 Anacapa Street, which was on the last agenda, has been appealed, and it's tentatively scheduled for Planning Commission in June. The actual date hasn't been decided yet. Is there any members in the audience wishing to address the show on items not on our agenda? No? Seeing no one, we'll go to our first item, which is 416 and 418 Montgomery Street, if the applicants would like to come up to the table. It's so hot.
Good morning, I'm Dan Secord. This is my wife Mary and our agent Dave Tabor.
Okay, and I'm Kelly Broadison, Assistant Planner with Community Development. The proposal today is for the conversion of 2 existing residential units into condominiums at 416 and 418 Montgomery Street. The 8,598 square foot lot is currently developed with 2 3-bedroom units. There is an existing attached 360 square foot 2-car garage, and 2 new uncovered parking spaces are proposed along the private alley off of Montgomery Street. The project was reviewed by the Architectural Board of Review on 2 occasions. Originally, on August 25th, the board requested that the applicant study some condo amenities such as trash and recycle bins, storage areas, and the landscaping. When the project returned on November 3rd, 2008, the board found the project design acceptable for a condo conversion. Further refinements will be made to the landscape plan as the project returns for final approval. Subsequent to today's meeting, the project will return to ABR for preliminary and final approval. During the application process, staff also reviewed the physical standards for condominium conversions. This conversion includes improvements to foundations, replacing paved walkways, new fencing, landscaping, and parking. The proposal also involves physical amenities required by condo conversion ordinance, such as private laundry facilities, private storage space, parking, and private outdoor living space. Let's see. The project conforms to the city's zoning and building ordinance and the policies of the general plan. In addition, the size and massing of the project will not be changed and are consistent with the surrounding neighborhood. As the condo conversion ordinance allows the staff hearing officer to grant exceptions to some of the physical standards under Section 2888 of the Municipal Code. The applicant is requesting one exception be made to the requirements to provide the private outdoor living space. Staff finds that the finding for this exception can be made because the project includes design features which offset the project's failure to meet this standard. Let's see. So some of
that included in the. That request wasn't included in the original request, right?
No,
Okay, so
it was not.
The applicant does meet the requirement for the 15 by 15 open space. However, they want to ask for an exception from the private outdoor living space, and I can let the applicant speak to that a little more in detail when they make their presentation.
Okay.
And I don't know if you want to go into that now or wait.
That's
okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
That's okay. So the finding, staff feels that the finding for the exception can be made, as I said, because the project includes design features which offset the project's failure to meet the standard, because they are providing, let's see, I wrote it down. They're providing more than the 15% open space in the back here, and they also have a private living space in the front, which the unit in the front will be using as their private outdoor living space. Therefore, staff recommends that the staff hearing officer can approve the condominium conversion and the tentative subdivision map, making the findings outlined in the staff report and subject to the conditions of approval in Exhibit A. And then, as you know, this is Dan Secord, the owner, Dave Tabor, the agent, and Mrs. Secord, sorry I don't remember, Mary Secord, also owner.
Okay. I didn't get a copy of the physical elements report, but I did notice in the conditions that there was a condition requiring any element with a useful life of less than 5 years are going to be fixed. Was there any major element that was identified, or just minor?
No, Mr. Reardon, there were no major elements. There was one element that had a useful life of less than 5 years, and it was siding and brick fields, window wood and wood siding need maintenance, treatment, and touch-up, and that falls under the category of exterior paint.
Okay.
And the applicant's planning on upgrading that as they go through the condo conversion permit with building and safety.
Okay. I think that was my questions for you right now. Thank you.
Okay.
If you'd like to make a presentation.
I'll go. Thank you for that presentation. We've enjoyed all the hard work that Kelly's put into the project, and hope you do too. We think this is a project that's well suited for conversion to condominiums, and I was at the ABR for the first meeting we went, and went back for the second meeting, and I can say that was the point that the ABR fell in love with the project, kind of seeing the changes that it went through and kind of identifying what the little things are going on. And it was that first meeting where was the moment where I fell in love with this project. It was kind of working around, kind of going over, we're fixing this over here, we're doing this over here, but it was the item on front of the agenda ahead of us at the ABR where they had a very similar situation. They had 2 existing units, and they were tearing them down to the ground and building a 3-story wall on the south side, and windows overlooking the neighbors' yards, and parking, a wall of garage walls, and things like that. And the issue was neighborhood compatibility. How do you fit this into the neighborhood? How do you fit this into the neighborhood? And I was sitting there with this project going, we're not changing anything. It fits into the neighborhood. It's going to continue to fit into the neighborhood. And I think with the changes that are made, it just makes an improvement to the overall situation there. Points of clarification on the exception. There was some confusion as to which of the code standards in your amazingly simple zoning code applied here. So in looking at the provisions for private outdoor space, we have a large front yard. Backing up a little bit, the owners, the folks who live in the units are owners. They're the daughters and their families of the Secords. They and their young children are looking forward to the years ahead where they can walk a block to Roosevelt School to go to school and enjoy this wonderful neighborhood some more. But they currently make full use of this front yard, enjoy the interactions with the street, and have really become part of the neighborhood probably because of that front yard area, even though they've only been there a few years. So they have this large area there now. They have this area in the back, and the parking here has been designed with the grass circle pavers. So when the car is not there, this whole area will be a lawn area in the back. The reason we need an exception is the qualifying space up front here only has a 9-foot dimension. The qualifying the distance across here only is 9 feet, and the code, I believe, says the minimum dimension has to be 10 feet. So overall, there's over 700 square feet of open area here that would qualify for open space, but doesn't because it's 1 foot short of the standards. That's the exception we're asking for. I think if there's an area to be considered for a common area, we have this area in the back, which currently functions as a common area, is where all the utility stuff is stored. The area, again, I think the qualifiers, it needs to be 15 by 15. This area is 18 by 13 by 16 by 17. So we have the area there. It's over 255 square feet, but we're off by 2 feet on this corner, qualifying for that standard too. So we feel that the justification is there for the functionality of it and the overall area, meeting the overall area requirements to grant that exception.
But what you're stating, the requirement for the R2 zone is the 1,250 square foot open yard area could be broken up into smaller areas. For condominium conversions, you need to comply with the R4 zone, which is either the private outdoor living space or the common outdoor living space. So what you're telling me, you're asking for an exception for the private one where you have to have individual units or individual areas as well as at 15 by 15 versus common, because you don't, this is a question, does the site meet the 15% open area under the common provision?
It does, except for the accessibility.
Okay.
The area that qualifies this is a large backyard area.
Excepting the easements, the 12-foot and the 9-foot
Yeah,
easement?
this was never included in that area. This, if we excluded out, we still have 1,295 square feet in this yard.
Okay.
The overall amount of open space is 50%,
Okay.
which far exceeds the 15-foot standard for the common or the 10-foot standard for the private yard. So I think that's an additional justification for the exception. We have 5 times the amount of open space that the ordinance requires.
Okay. Sorry for interrupting. I was just clarifying.
I don't think you saw this. This was the rendering that was shown at the Planning Commission. It just shows that some of the changes that are taking place there along the alley. This is the corner. Montgomery Street is here, so we have a fence that goes along here and a hedge that starts in here and goes down with the gates. So that's going to be replaced by a new 3.5-foot high fence with landscaping along it. There's the lawn parking space. This hedge is going to be cut down to 3.5 foot high, and then the brick paved parking space is here, and then the garage with the alley going along the back here.
So,
That's just a rendering of the corner showing the nice neighborhood.
so both of the
Friendly.
paving or parking areas would be permeable?
Yes, one will be grass circles, and the other one's going to be brick on sand.
Okay. Right.
I think that's it for me.
Okay. I actually had asked Steve to be here today because that's new information regarding the requested waiver for the open yard, because my concern is with the open yard area for the front unit and then the 2 new parking spaces, that one of which is within an area right now that kind of functions as their backyard area, although it's very small. So I asked if Steve could come here to talk about what options were looked at, which ones might work. But I appreciate your intro comments, how you're proposing to keep what's there and to convert what's there instead of raising the site and building this huge 2-unit condo building. So I really appreciate that effort that you guys are putting forward and trying to work out a solution that would be workable for both of the owners of this site.
We propose to convey these to our children. This amounts to entry-level housing for the city. We assume perhaps if their family grows, they may not live there forever. We're not trying to tell you that they will. Simply that the product that we're creating is meritorious with respect to the city, because it provides entry-level housing for planners.
Well, that's what I was thinking with the front unit, is that it's kind of affordable by design.
That's correct.
A certain type of person is going to want to live there, and they're going to know going into it that there's not much outdoor area for them. But still, at the approval process, trying to see if there's some ways of making it work the best we can.
The exception is the way. I think we can provide more area coming back into this area if you want. This is not contiguous with the front house, and while it may be a solution, I think the exception is a better solution because it's more rational.
Which I think I'd want Danny to speak to too, and that I don't know if I could take action since the waiver wasn't noticed, was it? But I would like to discuss the project.
Mr. Reardon, the exception is not required to be noticed. You can take action on it today.
Okay, great. Then the other question for Danny is, since they do meet the common outdoor living space method, with the exception of the outdoor living space being accessible to all dwelling units on the site, I guess why was it chosen that the exception would be for the private outdoor living space versus just stating the fact that they have the 15% required open yard? Private common outdoor living space, they have it. It's just not accessible to both units, not easily accessible. Do you understand what I'm trying to ask?
I think so. Mr. Reardon, so this project does meet the common outdoor living space requirement of the R3, R4 zone, which is
For
all
land area.
That's all that's required for the condo conversion ordinance. And, you know, the common open space has to be accessible to all units, but it doesn't have to be immediately adjacent or anything like that. You know, normally when
Is
you're
it cold
when you're,
coming on?
Now we're going to get cold.
Yeah, we're going to be
well,
freezing.
they're working on the air conditioning system, so for everyone who's in here, it's really hot, and then it might be really
Really
cold.
cold.
And they just installed these things, and they're testing them this week. So our apologies. So getting back to the open yard, it meets the requirement, and if you think of sort of like the common R3, R4 apartment development, you know, the open yard can be way in the back, and you may have to go past a whole bunch of other units to get to it, and it would be sort of a similar situation here. We would consider it accessible, so we would say that it meets the common outdoor living space in all aspects. But my understanding is the applicants don't necessarily want that back space to be shared.
Well, yeah, it's the
the
backyard
front
for this
space.
unit. The way it's laid out, I went out there. It's very lovely, nice backyard.
we have-
It's definitely the backyard.
We have
for the
pictures of it
house.
all, should you wish to
Right.
see them.
And it's so from a zoning standpoint, they meet the requirement, but the applicants don't want to use it in a common way. So that's why they're asking for this exception, and it is, it is supportable. They do meet the private outdoor living space requirement except for the 10-foot dimension. And so that's from our thinking, because it meets one requirement, it almost meets the other. You know, you could grant. We thought the exception was acceptable and supportable.
Okay, thank you. One other thing was, how do you envision the storage and the parking to work? In terms of the garages for both unit? Okay, so explain how the garage, please.
We're trying to satisfy the standard of one covered space and one open space for each unit. So the garage is going to be a shared feature, a common feature in the condominium. So the parking space nearest the front is going to be used by 418 along with this open space, and the parking space in the back is going to be used by the back unit along with that parking space. The storage in here, however, is entirely for the front unit. There really wasn't a good space to add onto this unit, and other than I asked for another exception for the number of closets and the attic space and things like that in here, we felt it was best to provide the space in the garage for that unit, and then put the new storage space for 418 in the back here.
Okay.
Currently, they have a utility shed here, which is just being moved around the corner.
Okay. And then, I don't know if, Dave, you want to explain the different areas you looked for parking, or if Steve wants to comment on it?
Well, I will. There really was only one other option, and it wasn't a very good option. Was to put a garage right here. We could take access off of the alley, pull across the backyard, park in this area. Turnaround would be a problem. We could come in here and kind of right angle in for parking here, but there's no backup space there available. So any other parking option totally takes away this, and once we kind of got into the mechanics of trying to fit the squares and all the paths in here, it became obvious that, and we went over those options with the ABR too. That was one of the first questions they had. Well, why are you putting the parking here? And
Yeah, because it's the front, and it's putting the parking and having all the trash enclosure, having everything right at the front of the units.
well, the trash enclosures are both behind hedges and screened from view, and that was one of the reasons behind having the parking be paved and bricks, was that while the cars aren't there, which will be most of the day, they'll appear to be patio areas, so it doesn't fuss up the front too much.
And right now, They just park on the street, or do they park in the alleyway? Or
There's only one parking space per unit now, so there's no parking on the alley.
okay.
Some cars further down have areas in front of their garages where they can park, but there's no parking on the alley.
Oh, it's signed to no parking.
Yeah, it's signed.
Now, Steve, what about moving them closer to the alley?
Mr. Ridden, I'm Steve Foley with Public Works Transportation. Actually, the design that we first looked at did have the parking spaces closer to the alley. And as I recall, the one closest to Montgomery Street, we had requested that that needed to be moved. I think it was 6 inches or a foot forward. And I think in order to make the other open space work, we required it to be wider, and the reason for that is the requirement that the spaces be accessible, both ingress and egress, as far as maneuvering into those spaces and out of those spaces in one turning movement. So this was the design that transportation staff looked at and found that was functional, met those requirements after the review.
So you wouldn't be interested in the type of thing, pulling in like this and then
I'm sorry?
taking your car and parking it?
Parallel?
Yeah, like cutting it in, or so. It's just unfortunate that they're using up this open area here for parking.
We could look at other designs. It would be the same thing. We'd be looking at that's functional and able to access those spaces. I guess the other thing is then, in working with planning, is then what's supportable. Is that a setback on the?
This interior setback 3 feet.
So working with that line also.
Okay. Do you know the public works conditions? When I had another project recently, several weeks ago, and it was a 4-unit condo, so I know this is a 2-unit condo, and it was new. They were requesting improvements to the alleyway. It was the same thing. Access from the alley was at the end of the alley, actually, and they were asking for transition across the walkway. And I noticed on the site visit on the south side, there's concrete kind of filled in here, but on the north side, there's a little curb. It's maybe 4, enough to trip over, I found out. I was wondering.
We put a sign up there.
Well, I was busy looking at the plan as I'm, walking.
That evil curve.
Right. Do you know? Is there any recommendations? Or all I saw was the retiring of the street light and putting a new one in.
Have recently had the discussion with engineering and noticed that curb return coming across there. It may have been missed the first time, so we could ask that either the curb be removed or some asphaltic concrete or something put in there that would remove that tripping hazard. Basically, it would just make it to a slope requirement that meets ADA. And we could add that to the Montgomery Street improvement.
Huh? Right there,
This goes across the sidewalk at the interface.
Okay.
So I think what might be involved at the most is would involve those first 2 sections of sidewalk.
Yeah, you see it right here.
Yeah.
In this picture, you can see
There you go.
it's not significant.
If you wish, we could fill that up, but
Yeah.
it would.
I don't know if the other side's shown in any of the pictures.
This doesn't show the shadow line. You can't really see it.
Okay, well, that was just my question. I want to open the public hearing. Is there anybody here who would like to address the staff hearing officer on 1416 and 1418 Montgomery Street? No? Have we received any letters?
No, I have not received any comments from.
And, okay, no comments. All right, so I'll close the public hearing. Okay. So yeah, back to that trip hazard. Recognizing that it is existing units that you're converting, you're not doing a big. I don't want to put a huge expense on the project, but it is something that I think should be looked into as part of the project. I don't know how do we normally have.
I believe there's a public improvements condition that we would add a little bit of language to talk about that curvature.
Okay, so
Item D5.
yeah, I circle this one.
I believe it would be appropriate to add some language into that to talk about changing that in some way to make it pedestrian friendly.
Adjusting the height of the sidewalk to make it consistent with the grade of the alley.
Yes.
And I would just add that slope to meet ADA requirements. Or not to exceed ADA requirements.
But my intent of the condition is not to have a full-on handicap ramp. So I want to get that worked into the condition that, but just to have the transition, work on the transition across the way.
We're not really adjusting from one grade to another. We're just taking a bump out of the road,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah.
Much as you would do with a sidewalk that had been lifted up by tree roots.
Yes, yes.
And that happens on that street as well.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The other on the site visit, walking around, your daughter was very nice. She was very helpful in pointing out. I noticed. Are you proposing to relocate this gate or the existing fence here to make more room, or is it staying the
I
same?
think we will. We'll have to
Put it on. Okay.
at some future time. I believe we will have to do that at some future time.
Okay. The other comment I wanted to discuss with you, Danny, was the trash area. We worked together recently on zoning ordinance amendments, going through the process, and we identified some potential future amendments that we were looking into, in specifically in regards to trash containers that typically in single-family areas, homeowners store their trash in their side yard setback. It's not allowed. If it got excessive, we would enforce on it, but we were looking at putting a limit on the size of containers that can be stored in the setback. And currently their trash is located in a central area, like in this area. It's in the back. It's hidden from view. It's my understanding the trash people come in and get the cans and bring them out. And the location for 416 Montgomery is nice. It's tucked behind, not seen, but this new one, and I know it's a nice, pretty enclosure, but it's still in the front of the unit. Would staff be supportive of having it in the back, or? Leaving it where? Oh, go ahead.
Our practice has been that if it's outside the setback and it's not in the front yard, then we allow it to be as proposed. And because this is an alley, it's not a front yard; it's a side yard.
Since we just changed that. Okay.
Right. So it meets the requirement. You know, I think it's just from a practical standpoint, it's nicer to have it close to the street. It's one other. So you're asking whether we would support it further back?
Just moved away from, yeah. But I understand the pros of having it there. I was just looking for you.
Would you be able
Yeah.
to support the same treatment that we see here? It is in the setback,
I
but it
think
gets
it's-
it out of here if that is your desire and makes it easier for the operation.
I think I like it better.
All right.
Yeah, but-
Okay. Well,
From a staff standpoint, we definitely want it outside the setback.
all right. Okay.
You know, the question is, could it be located further back?
Would it still
I
be in
mean,
the setback over there?
It's
It'd be in a setback.
it's possible for there. I mean, there may be some other locations that would be further back. It
Study that.
I don't know. Personally, I sort of like it where it is.
You know, this area puts the trash for 418 right next to 416, which we wanted to try to avoid.
Right. Okay.
I do have. Oh, go ahead.
May I speak to that for just a minute? The trash on 418, that enclosure is in an enclosure and it's also behind a fence. So
Doubly
it's
screened.
Doubly screened. The other issue with the current trash is that it creates a serious safety hazard because the gentlemen from the trash company come in and while we have substantial gates, they tend to be left open, and dogs, and there's a baby in the house
Children, yeah.
who's going to be a toddler running around. So it's a safety issue, and that's why we wanted to move it closer.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Okay. Well, I think this project is a good project. It makes sense to convert them into condominiums. I like the fact that you are preserving the existing units and working with them. I do have concerns with the open yard area for 418, but in a way it may make it affordable by design for future owners. I think the exception to the outdoor living space is supportable in that there is adequate open area on the site. It's just the way the site was developed with the unit in the back first and then another unit put up front. It's just, awkward the way it was laid out, but it is the existing situation. So I think the waiver can be supported. And so I can make the findings outlined in the staff report. I would like to make some changes to the findings.
Could you tell us what page, please?
Yes, page 5, where it starts findings. A, tentative subdivision map. I think that one's fine the way it is. On the next page, page 6, number B. Oh, I'm in the staff report.
Okay.
Page. This one. Keep going.
One more. Sorry. Okay.
Okay, so on number 1, 2, and 4, where it talks about where it has section so-and-so and then it says above, I'd like to strike above and put of the written staff report dated April 1st, 2009. So in each of those 3 situations, because that will be what will be in the resolution.
Does that represent an issue for us? No. Okay.
Then in number 4, and also number, I said 1, 2,
said
and 4. Okay. So then in number 4, where it says several upgrades are proposed to enhance the existing structures, I'd like to spell out what those enhancements were. And they're the 2 uncovered parking spaces, right? The trash recycling, additional storage space, upgrading walkways, new fencing and landscaping along the street and alley frontage. So just spelling out what some of those are. Then in regards to the conditions, we need to add a finding for the waiver. Do you, do you have one proposed?
Worked on it kind of at the last minute on the fly. So I just stated that staff, the finding for the exception can be made because the project includes design features which offset the project's failure to meet the standard by providing a private outdoor space in the front yard. And so I don't know if that's going to be good enough.
Oh, and I'd like the finding to also reflect the fact that there is adequate open space on the site.
Okay.
That there's, so if you could work that in too, Gloria. And then with the conditions on page 4 of 8.
Now we're going backwards?
Yeah, so
Okay. It's fun.
okay, so number 5, we're going to include adjusting the height of the sidewalk at the alleyway, not to exceed ADA requirements. Then I think between E and F, Gloria, there's a bold. It says submittal for recordation of parcel map. I think it's missing a letter, so they need to be
Oh, no, that's a number 1, E1.
Oh, is that what
And
that
I
is?
was always taught for when there's just one, you don't put a numeral.
Okay, well,
a
indent it
numeral.
then. Just indent it then.
Just indent, okay.
Indent F1?
E1.
E1,
The-
that
the
where
number
there's...
one.
Oh, this, okay.
That's how Jan had it too.
Okay. And then...
But I can add a 1 too. Add a 1, okay.
And then I would like to add a condition, I'm not sure under which one, but to work with Public Works staff on the uncovered parking space for 418 to try to reduce the encroachment into the open yard, or into the open area here as much as possible.
If we assume that the work has already been done between us and Public Works staff, what might the direction be, and how would we memorialize it? Does that mean we have to come back here? Or
No, I would just recheck with transportation staff, and then
to have him tell you that it had already been done?
you can work with Kelly.
Okay.
Yeah, Kelly will be in part of the, keep Kelly in the loop.
I can attest that it originally did come in with the least amount of encroachment, and staff, planning and transportation did slowly force them to encroach their parking spot further and further to avoid requiring a mod, to avoid encroaching into the public alleyway, and also to meet the ingress and egress. So, but we can also double check on that one more time.
Yeah, that would, I wish if you could.
Mr. Reardon, I believe your intent is to perhaps look at a parallel.
Well, that would
parallel-
require a mod, so that would entail
that
coming back to
Makes
me.
the nonconformance worse, I believe. Is it not?
So just if there's some way it could be altered, reduced, meet the minimum requirement, yeah.
We'll look at shading it.
Yeah.
What was that?
So we'll look at shading it. I think that's what she's looking at, somehow shading it, tweaking it.
Smaller cars?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
I'll put a condition, you can only have the new two-wheeled Segway vehicle. It's not going to be really small. Okay, so with that, I approve your project, and my action is appealable to the Planning Commission within 10 calendar days, and they also have the oversight authority, and they review my actions, and they could decide within that same 10-day period to call it up if it
And you
warrants.
approve the exception as well?
Correct.
And so the approval includes the exception?
Correct.
Okay. I would like to make a brief pitch about the pole profusion in the neighborhood and try to not put another pole on Montgomery Street, another utility pole. We have pictures of the existing pole. There's 30 wires up there, and this Cobra, which is, the Cobra seems offensive to somebody, but it does its job. It's perfectly adequate. The pole's not going anywhere. I question the need, the nexus, or the program that requires another pole in that neighborhood.
Well, the idea is that these poles will go away over time and the utilities will be placed underground, and so they are removing the streetlights from those poles.
And so my question has to do with the nexus issue or the program. I appreciate that there's a desire of the city to underground the poles. That's not being required. You're adding a pole.
There is a nexus with the subdivision. It's in our code that we look at the public improvements and what are appropriate public improvements for the site. That's why I was questioning regarding the transitions here. It's Public Works looked at it and what were they recommending. So as part of the subdivision, there is a nexus, and it is one appropriate request to do. Okay?
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, Steve. The next project's at 1600 Mountain Drive.
Take anything or just
You can leave, I'll bring it to you. Thanks. Whenever you're ready. Hi. Now it's cold. Yep. Oh, we're fixing the air conditioner too.
Well, okay. As you said, the project before you today is a new construction of a house, a replacement house for a house that was destroyed in the Tea Fire. This was the original house. And the modification requests are to allow the original garage, which is still standing, which was not destroyed, to be converted to accessory space over 500 square feet. The garage is 762 square feet. The second modification is to allow an oversized, a four-car carport to be constructed as part of the replacement house, and it will be over 750 square feet. I just want to mention at this time that we had exempted this project under SEQRA section 15269A, and we have made a determination that the correct exemption is section 15303. So I want to make sure that is noted in the record at the beginning.
Okay.
Just anyway, the project site is obviously hillside design. It's over 20% slope, so it did go before the Single Family Design Board. The SFDB did support the modifications and recommended forwarding on to the staff hearing officer. And the board felt the sizes were appropriate for the site. The site is about 18.26 acres, so given the size, the request is really not out of proportion for both the conversion of the garage and the new carport. Just to give a little background, the site received several modifications. One was originally for the garage, and at that time we believe that the ordinance only allowed for 500 square feet, and they requested it was 782. So it already has a modification for the oversized garage. They also received a modification for the pool house. The pool house was slightly damaged in the T-fire, but we believe it probably can be rebuilt or repaired fairly easily. And the greenhouse also received a modification, previous modification, and that was not damaged at all in the T-fire. So those are the additional accessory structures that are already on site. We support the modifications. We believe on a lot this size that the both of the requests are reasonable, and that the normal reason for not supporting a modification for oversized accessory structures and garages is that it can impact surrounding neighbors. Obviously, in this case, the lot is so large that there really will be no impacts to adjacent sites. And we routinely support modifications on larger lots, and given the size of this lot, we think that the modifications can be granted, that they do meet the purposes and intent of the zoning ordinance, and that it is a reasonable request. So, given that, we recommend approval.
Okay.
I did want to mention there were a few conditions also. I know that you had a few concerns. One of our conditions is that we want to make sure that there's a demolition permit obtained prior to for the original house prior to issuance of building permits for the new residents. Also, we wanted to make sure that there's some type of condition imposed that the garage will only be used for storage and not for additional parking. And I know you had some concerns too. You wanted to make sure that did happen. That are there going to be any exterior changes to the garage?
Well, I just question if there was a floor plan or a elevation submitted for changes, but you can go into that in your presentation. So your condition here where it says said approval is subject to conditions that the converted garage be used solely for storage and not additional parking, and that the construction debris remaining from the destroyed main house be removed prior to the issuance of any building permits for the new. So not only construction debris, but the house be demolished, whatever's remaining of it?
It's demolished. It's just construction debris. I mean, if there's not anything left of the house, it's just...
Okay.
The garage remains standing. That's fine. It's intact. But the house...
I saw it. It was there. Okay. Just, maybe we can be more specific if we discuss that part.
Okay.
Now, is there an existing zoning compliance declaration recorded on the property?
No, there's not.
Would you be recommending that one be?
We could. I don't believe that this could be. It really is being used for storage. The owner is an artist, and it's being used for.
I noticed all the stuff around the property. Yeah.
But we can certainly do that.
Okay.
I discussed that with Laura, and I think that they would be agreeable with that.
Okay. Would you like to state your name and association with the project, and Adam?
Let's get over here. My name is it's not.
It looks like it's green.
It's green.
Anyway, my name is Laura Bradley, and I'm the agent for the Gardner Family Trust. Ted Gardner II is my client, and his house was lost in the T-fire, and he had contemplated building this building even before the fire started. So now it's just been an accelerated goal on his part because he needs to live in it as soon as possible. So the original design was to have enough space for 3 or 4 spaces below the main house, and he has actually used his previously existing garage for storage or art projects or property maintenance too, to some extent. So the question is really just moving the accessory spaces around and calling them the right thing. And I don't really have too much more to add besides what Ms. Teeter's already said. We are proceeding through a single-family design board. They supported the request for the modification. It's a very large parcel, and I think this is pretty reasonable considering actually the property maintenance things as well as my client's interesting art expectations.
Now, why didn't he just want to rebuild it where it is?
like I said, he had actually contemplated starting this before the T fire. So he had been, and it's a pretty unusual building. It's in the shape of a
Stack of books.
we call it the book building. So because he'd already been working on that, and as you know, his whole property is something of a sculpture garden. So he sees this building as a sculpture building, and so he had already been in the process with that. In fact, I think I filed a couple of weeks before the T fire. So it's just that it's accelerated. Now he really wants to live in this because while he's thinking about what to do with the previous building site, he may and probably will want to rebuild that. And I know we'd be back through this hearing for a performance standard permit for that purpose. But right now, there's nothing on the table, and he's probably dreaming of something as we speak. So, but even at that time, right now, the FAR is 44% of the maximum FAR. So even with the new building, I'm not sure that it would be.
That's interesting.
It's not on.
Oh, what's it on?
It looked lit. I apologize. Do you have to repeat all that? Laura Bradley for the agent.
Okay.
And Ms. Dieter actually did go over the requirement for the demolition of the previously existing residence and I forgot the term, but the notice to property owner equivalent, so that the existing garage wouldn't be used as a dwelling unit. That's the goal. It would be acceptable.
Okay.
Maybe I can hear from you about what specifications you need for the garage that's essentially functioning as a storage function now.
It was just a question I had. Was there any proposed changes to it? Were you going to remove the garage doors, provide other regular doors on it, or just keep it as is and use it as a store? It was just a question. What changes were proposed?
I don't think the owner wants to change anything about it. It's actually very accessible that way. So whether it's for chainsaw maintenance or art bronze sculpture storage, it seems to work okay with the garage door opening, unless it's objectionable to you.
And I just wanted to mention, just having been on site, I doubt that it's not very likely that it will be used for additional parking. And there's such a distance between the old garage and the new proposed house that I think that in this particular case, I think it's very unlikely that it will be used for additional parking.
Okay. Right. Yeah, my comment was just in regards to the conditions here. So. All right, I'd like to open the public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to address the staff hearing officer on 1600 West Mountain Drive? No, have we received any?
I have not received any correspondence or any emails, phone calls.
Okay, I'd like to close the public hearing then. Looking at the site plan, I think...
I'm sorry, I should have done this earlier. There was just a confusion about the square footage of the previous house, and because he may want to come in and rebuild that, it's actually 3630 square feet. It's not 2506. As we found on older building permits, I think it was an error on
the only building permit didn't separate out the garage, and we were confused on the size of the house. But when we
That's
pulled
what it says, 3630.
Right.
But we weren't sure if that would included the garage.
Okay.
But we broke it out, and it is just the single family.
And I have a copy of the plans, the 1988 plans that show the 3630, and so I just want to put this in the record so we get that in the action that the previous house that was destroyed was 3630 as opposed to 2506.
Well, we can put that in the street file along with the staff report so that it's clear.
Yeah, we can have the reso have the change. In regards to the legend here, oh, this is a different plan than what I have.
Really?
Well, okay, I don't remember these up here, but number of existing buildings to be demolished. There actually is the one single family, right? Destroyed?
Yes, it isn't something we propose, but we'll be doing it per your condition.
Just trying to make it clear, because if someone read the plan, it says number of existing parking spaces, 3 inside garage, more and motor court. Number of proposed parking spaces, 4 undercover. So it looks like there's 7. So just being more clear of what this. to be converted.
Yes, I'm sorry. These were actually primarily for the single-family design board, so.
Yeah, just so that, and then required parking space is actually 2, right? Minor things, just if it, but looking back in the record of what it is, then this would be removed. But I went out to the site visit, and I've ridden my bike by this many times, and now that the vegetation's clear and you can see all the various elements, I never noticed a huge chair. I've always liked the mailbox.
The mailbox is curious. Did you see Rubik's Cube? The Rubik's
Yes.
Cube?
Yeah. And I agree. This is a large lot, and it has adequate area to support increased accessory space as well as larger garage areas. And there's no parking along Mountain Drive there, so the 4 spaces does provide some areas for guests. So I can make the findings outlined in the staff report, but I would like to add just a little bit, just be more specific. That says the staff hearing officer finds that the modifications that I want to add to allow a total of 2,396 square feet of accessory space and a 872 square foot carport are consistent with the purposes and intent. So just specify what was approved. And then I would also like to add in the condition the fact that existing which the part of the residence that the fire didn't take care of, that be demolished too. So that
There is that small portion over there that is.
Right.
Yeah.
so that it all be removed, so that the remnants maybe of house.
Can I ask one question
Yes.
about that? Because the owner is probably going to want to do something and on that site, because that's a relatively easier building site. If he comes in with plans for a replacement residence there, I mean, subject to the PSP process, and it can somehow make use of some of the remnants of the main building, would that, I guess we would just work through that with staff and the building department. Do you know what I mean?
Like the
He really
foundation?
wants, yeah, if portions of the foundation are adequate, or if the portions of it have met a structural engineer's certification that they're okay to reuse, and he wants to build on that site.
Well, what was requested today was a certain amount of accessory space and a certain amount of the carport. So if that area was to remain, what would it be used as? What it?
No, I'm just talking about, you want to have what's left of the residence adjacent to the garage demolished, and the owner is probably thinking about trying to rebuild on that structure. If he can retain some of the existing foundation work or retaining walls around that existing,
That'd be fine to use.
We can,
yeah.
I mean, the idea is that we just don't want to leave it in the state that it's in
Right.
before we pull building permit for the new one.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So as long as that's clear in the condition, I don't want to. If my owner is told that he has to remove it, even though he's got a designer that says, no, this is structurally sound and we can reuse it, that would.
Renee's trying to click on.
I think it's fine. It's probably going to just depend on the wording of the condition. Our goal is to remove any loose debris so that it doesn't flow down the hill, and also to not retain anything that would count as square footage, like Ms. Reardon pointed out. So if it's foundation work that's stable, that's fine. If there's walls,
I think
that's fine too. Site walls. We just don't want to have square footage above what's being approved today, and any loose fire debris that can travel off the site.
I think the foundation is really the only thing that could be saved, and the rest of it is beyond.
But foundation work is expensive, so I know the owner's going to ask about that.
Yeah, no, the foundation work's fine in any site walls.
Right.
But yeah, it's just any.
The exterior stairway, and there's kind of a retaining wall that goes down to the garage. So
Yeah,
Foundation
I
really
think
good
that
work.
can be, that's sort of connected to the
Foundation.
and the garage there. It all kind of flows.
right. There's an exterior stairway, Susan, from that goes from here down to the back of the garage, and then that might be okay.
Yeah, my concern is more of the the excess of square footage over what I've specified in the condition.
Right.
And then, like Ms. Brooks said, any debris that might travel off-site.
Right.
So I don't have a concern with leaving the foundation. There's a lot of homes I've seen that they are reusing their existing foundation.
Okay.
That's fine.
Just want to make sure about that.
That's fine. That's good to clarify. And then I won't add the condition regarding the zoning compliance declaration, but if during the plan check they feel it's necessary, this wouldn't preclude them from requiring it. So I'll leave it up to zoning staff for that.
Okay.
My action is appealable within 10 calendar days. And again, Planning Commission has oversight authority. And during that same 10-day appeal period, they can decide to call up this project to them if they feel it's warranted.
Okay.
All right? Thank you.
Thank you.
Kate's on again. You can't turn it.
You don't want these doors open?
We had them open, and then, yeah, we can open them. Joanne, would you mind opening the doors? Right there. Yeah, oh, you can? Are you rolling? Thanks. The air conditioning, it was hot when we started, and then the air conditioning kicked on, so we closed everything up, and then it's hot again. Okay, sorry. That mic is not on. So we need your help. Okay, the next project is 428 Conejo Road. The applicants would like to come up. I know. Well, we've been here since the beginning when it started hot, right?
Yeah.
And then it got cold. Did you get cold? Freezing?
Yes.
I put my jacket in the car.
I know. Well, yeah, sorry. We're fixing our system. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Let's get that centered. Okay, the project site, which is almost 7,000 square feet, is located in the T Fire burn area. It's although it's a small lot, it is zoned A1, which requires 35-foot front yard and 15-foot setbacks off of both interior. As you can see with the property lines here, the property has frontage onto Conejo Road at both ends. Previous development on site consisted of a single-family residence shown here on the site plan outlined in the pale yellow. The proposed project involves rebuilding of the previous restaurant and the one-car garage and previous single-family residence and one-car garage.
Okay, you're invited to dinner.
I must be hungry. And the addition of a second story, a partial second story here shown in red. The area shown in hatch here, which is approximately 125 square feet, and will be placed on the previously existing footprint, will be located within the 35-foot front yard setback off this frontage. It is staff's position that the amount of encroachment being requested is very minor in the scope of things. The lot is drastically undersized, plus the slope constraint. Also considered as the fact that the house meets all other zoning requirements except for this area, which through the non-conforming ordinance has permission to be rebuilt in that front yard. So the only amount of additional encroachment is the 125 square foot here on the second floor. And staff would like this project supported and approved as submitted.
Great, thank you. I noticed that the open yards moved back 10 feet.
Correct. Oh yes, any plan submitted in conjunction with any approval would correctly identify elimination of the first 10 feet of the property here on this second frontage from being included in the open yard. Okay. As you can see, I just identified the area here.
The rear yard setback.
Actually, it's new ordinance language that now allows for a second front yard to be used for the open yard minus the first 10 feet of it.
Okay.
The idea being is that you can construct a fence 10 feet back from your front property line and go up high, and we don't want a fence to bisect your open yard areas. So,
Can we still build a fence near or on the property line?
3.5 feet in height.
Once you get back to 10 feet, though, you could go to a maximum height of 10 feet, 8 feet.
Okay.
So providing, again, the backyard amenity of
We
privacy.
have considerations about road coming down here, whether the lights will be shut.
Okay. So a fence at 10 feet back with landscaping in the first 10 feet, the appropriate way to accomplish that.
All right. Would you like to state your name and association with the project and what you'd like to add?
I'm Dale Pekarik. I'm from the Fine Line, and I did the design on the drawings that you see before you today. With me are Duncan and Terry Thomas, the owners of the property. And the project basically is a simple single-family residence. It was 960 square feet to begin with, which is outlined in the yellow that you see before you. And what we have and why we put the house back exactly where it was is in the area we have what are called screw anchors that are supportive of the foundation, and they're precisely located, and those were put in 5 years ago?
No, 12 years.
12 years ago, and what we're trying to do is preserve those in terms of cost-saving measures to put the house back just precisely where it was. And by doing so, we were able to come up with a floor plan where the garage was, where the existing residence was, and then additionally on top of that, their desires were to have a little bit larger room space and a second bedroom upstairs, which actually will be the master bedroom. And by doing so, we projected the new second floor over a portion of the first floor. Unfortunately, we had to encroach into that setback, 35-foot front yard setback requirement. And once again, the lot is small, and the setbacks are pretty, generous for a lot this size. So we were kind of pushed on our limits what we could do here. And by trying to establish the building farther back, it would not be sitting over these anchor screws that we have here, which are supportive, and it would offset, structural engineering and actually add quite a bit of money to the foundation and the structure of the building. And we did take this before the design review board, the single family design review board, and they saw favorably of the design of the project and also made recommendations that they would be supportive of the modification that you see before you today.
Okay, I do have questions regarding their comments. They and how you've responded to it regarding lowering the second story plate height from 9 feet to 7.5 feet.
Yes, we did.
Okay, so you're fine.
That was pushed down. It was the second floor, and it was just pushed down. Plus, this side garage roof sloped up to the side, and now we had a roof that went from front to back, and we bought it. It was a very simple solution. That was one of the ones we tossed around in the beginning. So as it came to fruition, it came about.
Okay. I think that was my only question. I'd like to open the public hearing. Is there anyone here who'd like to address the staff hearing officer on 428 Conejo Road? We haven't had any correspondence?
No, we haven't.
Okay, I'd like to close the public hearing. I went to the site and visited the site, and it always amazes me how the fire just picked and chose.
You saw the house next door is still there?
Yeah. And then you drive down the road,
And there's nothing.
yeah. And
There's
then
very little damage to this house.
And same with the project that was before us. This site was really burned, and right across the street, there's a house.
Yeah.
And your house that's still standing has wood siding.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, they have that, just one edge. It's just that one edge that is charred or scarred.
Right. Yeah. Well, I agree this site is severely constrained. It's significantly undersized. It has the steep slope. And I understand your desire to want to use the existing footprint area and reduce costs as much as possible. And the fact that you have 2 front yards. And I like to hear that you responded to the ABR's suggestion regarding lowering the second story plate height, because given the slope and the main entrance from Conejo Drive, it looks pretty tall from the street, and asking for an encroachment into that front yard, trying to keep it as
low.
Yeah, compact as possible is good. So with with those changes, I can support your modification and make the findings in the staff report. I do want to add. I've done it to all three projects. Add onto the findings, just to make it, to outline some of the constraints. So after the first sentence, Gloria, where it says appropriate improvement on the lot, add the lot is significantly below the required minimum size, is bounded on two sides by a public street, and has a slope of approximately 29%. And then it goes on to say what it does. The proposed second-story addition will provide an expanded floor plan within the previously existing footprint on a constrained lot with no impacts to the neighborhood. So with that, and there's no suggested conditions. So with that, you have a project, and it is appealable within 10 calendar days, like I said on the other projects, and they do have the oversight authority that they review the projects and my actions, and they could decide to call it up if they think it warrants discussion at their level.
Okay, so we're on the 10-day appeal period.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay?
Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you.
But during that appeal period, we expect you to go back to the...
Yes.
Yeah, we don't need to sit and wait.
Okay.
Yeah, you can apply to get back on.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
They didn't have 18,000 acres, though. 18 acres. 18,000.
Okay, the next project is 1041 Mission Ridge Road. Hi.
All right. This project site is about 2 acres, a little bit over. Currently developed with single-family residence, attached accessory, and other amenities, pool house, pool. Undergoing a pretty significant remodel right now. The project before us today involves an existing fence located here and shown in the yellow, which
no, that's
was
the property line. Here's the fence.
I'm sorry, the fence shown here.
You're just freezing because now it's cold in here.
Something's affecting it, okay? Which was actually permitted in 1985, and plans and permit are on file. However, the front lot line was incorrectly identified. Very common in these areas with unimproved right-of-way. Front lot lines are often identified at the edge of the paving or, distance back, whatever. As you can see, as identified in the yellow, the front lot line to this property is very irregular. As a part of the major remodel that's going on, alterations to the existing fence, entry gate, and a man gate in this area are also being proposed. As you can see, as shown here in the green clouded space, these portions of the existing gate and fence are located within 10 feet of this front lot line, an area where the zoning ordinance allows a maximum height of 3.5 feet. So modification is being requested to allow alterations to the existing fence and gate in this area. Staff is asking for support by requesting that the hearing officer make the finding that this is not violating the purpose or intent of the ordinance. To anyone out here on the road, this would look like it's clearly observing the required setback. There are no driveways or visibility issues for the public safety. A very small improvement requiring a little bit of relief. Any support or approval that we give would be subject to the condition that the portions being altered out here in the public right-of-way go through the encroachment permit process, which has been filed for and staff believes is going to be supported, and that the legalization of that encroachment through that encroachment permit be completed prior to the issuance of any building permit in conjunction with the man gate alteration and fence in this area.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to state your name for the record and add anything?
My name's Tom Jacobs. I'm the architect on the project and represent the owners, the Van Fleets. No, I have nothing to add. It's a very complete presentation.
Thank you. And you're...
Hi, Peter Copeland. I'm the contractor.
Okay. All right. I'd like to open the public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to address the staff hearing officer on 1041 Mission Ridge Road? Oh. Have you received any correspondence?
I have not.
All right. I'll close the public hearing. I went out to the site and visited the site, and agree. You can't tell where the property line is and the street line, and this amount of minor encroachment is not significant. It doesn't cause any impacts to the right-of-way. I like the fact that it is contingent on, or what's proposed is contingent on the approval of the encroachment permits for the fence. Now, is the entire fence going to be removed and replaced, or is just legalizing what's there?
We're legalizing what's there. One of the questions I had about the conditions, the documentation was submitted showing the permitting of the existing fence there, so I'm not sure I understand that condition that was submitted. The only change to the fence will be that the entry gate is being moved from here up to here, the automobile entry gate, and there'll be a new penetration here for a service gate.
Well, I think what this is meaning is,
Right.
these changes. So the approval, so when you submit for a building permit for this part, or revise your permits, or alter however for this part, that the encroachment permits be granted.
I understand.
Okay.
That's
And because these are in the city's right-of-way, they do need the design review board approval and building permits. The permit, although it clearly identifies what is there, misrepresents its location.
I want to show that as a straight line.
Right.
Yeah.
So, okay. Well, I make the findings outlined in the staff report. Like I said, it's not going to provide it or cause any safety issue or visibility issue. It's consistent in this type of neighborhood, the rural feel. So I can make the findings and approve your project, subject to the condition contained in the staff report. And my action is appealable within 10 calendar days to the Planning Commission. And again, they have the oversight authority, and they believe this warrants additional discussion at the Commission. They can decide to call it up. Okay?
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you.
And I adjourn the meeting.